The anime starts with a typical chaotic scene. A group of monsters is wreaking havoc, and a girl with a face that says, "This was not on my to-do list today," watches in horror as the situation spirals out of control, worse than a Monday. But surprise. A mysterious young man appears and saves her at the last moment, as if he were a superhero who arrived late to his own show. From there, we jump ahead in time. Yes, you know, that classic trick, and we meet our protagonist, Lost, who is looking for adventure companions on the guild's bulletin board. Spoiler, he's not doing very well. Just then, Narcina, a martial artist with more energy than a child after eating sugar, shows up and asks if he wants to team up with her. This is when the whole guild is shocked, as if someone had ordered pizza with pineapple. Lost, trying not to seem like a complete disaster, mentions that he is a healer. Well, sort of. Suddenly, the guild receptionist, Amherst, comes running in as if Lost had just set off a fire alarm. She introduces herself and without any filter warns Narcina not to even think about teaming up with that guy, because Lost is basically the king of uselessness. Great, right? That's starting off on the wrong foot. Amherst tells her that Lost can only use a basic healing spell and that he is an orphan from the labyrinth. That sounds very dramatic, but seriously, it's sadder than epic. Additionally, he can't use area spells or high-level ones, so the whole package. To top it off, the receptionist spills the tea that Lost was part of a group called the Lightning Blades, but was kicked out for being as useful as a broken umbrella. Amherst, always so direct, tells Narcina that if she teams up with Lost, with her budget face, she's going to end up sleeping on the street. What a way to call her poor. Although Narcina, with all style, shows that she has enough money. Amherst, scared that someone will rob her in this city full of adventurers less holy than a two-tailed cat, suggests that she shouldn't flaunt her wealth like that. Narcina thanks her for the advice with a smile that says, "I don't care what you say." And Amherst, seeing that she's more of a novice than a character without a tutorial, proposes a beginner's group. Of course, there's a fee because nothing is free here. Narcina, very much in her style, replies, "No thanks, mommy," because she decided a long time ago to form a team with Lost. After that, Narcina meets up with Lost, and Amherst is left curious about her attitude. A little later, Lost is filling out the group form, and Narcina, almost as if she has won the lottery, feels excited because finally she has found the guy she was looking for. Of course, nervousness makes her take a little while to sign, but in the end she does, and Lost pays the fee, because obviously adventures aren't cheap. As they walk through the city, it's revealed that no one has completed the Mardat Labyrinth, which is more filled with unexplored areas than a video game in beta. Over time, the city has become the preferred destination for adventurers, more like a tourist attraction with deadly dangers than anything else. At this point, Narcina remembers that Amherst suggested taking Lost to the Eastern Prairie, but Lost, in tour guide mode, tells her that only the weakest monsters are there and it's super boring. Instead, in the labyrinth, monsters are everywhere, almost as if they're on sale. Finally, they arrive at the labyrinth where Narcina, always determined, tells him she will go ahead because he's the healer, so it's his turn to be the bodyguard. Lost, doubtful, wonders if he can really fight, but he doesn't have much time to think about it because Narcina takes care of the goblins in the blink of an eye. Lost, like a history teacher, explains to her what magic stones are, which are basically what adventurers use to make a living. Narcina, curious, asks what the guild does with them, and Lost, in encyclopedia mode, tells her they are imbued with magic and have many uses, although the ones from goblins aren't worth much. At least they can pay for the night's accommodation. As expected, Narcina wants to delve deeper into the dungeon because her energy never runs out. As they move forward, Lost stops her just before she steps on a trap. Narcina, looking surprised, asks how he knew, and he modestly replies that the block was slightly different from the others. Narcina, impressed, tells him that's thief work, not healer work, but Lost, in his "I'm more interesting than I seem" mode, explains that he's been an adventurer for a long time, so he has a bit of everything. After walking for a while, our heroes come across something unexpected: an orc. A mid-level monster, and such a rare sight in those depths of the labyrinth that it probably has better things to do. Narcina, somewhat nervous, asks Lost if it would be better to run away like they've seen their ex. But Lost, all confident, replies that if they join forces, they should be able to handle it, even though inside he seems to be calculating whether it's really worth the risk. Narcina, excited because she always likes a good flying kick, decides to dive right in. Bam! She lands a kick on the orc, but in the act, she realizes that this monster is not just any pinata. The orc, clearly annoyed, counters, but Narcina shows she has ninja reflexes and dodges the blow. That said, she ends up stuck to the wall like an old car sticker. Just when it seems everything is going to go wrong, Lost appears to dispatch the orc like it was an annoying mosquito. Surprised, Narcina looks at him with wide eyes and asks, "Hey, weren't you a healer?" One of those who just heals and runs away, Lost, with a half smile, replies, "Well, I have some experience." Meanwhile, he takes a look at Narcina's wound, and she, in tough girl mode, says, "Nah, it's nothing, it barely grazed me," but Lost, in his concerned healer role, decides to heal her anyway, as if he doesn't want to get his uniform stained. When they finish, they see that the magic stone from the orc is quite a bit larger than the ones from the goblins, like comparing a marble to a watermelon. Lost, with shining eyes, suggests they return because they have already earned enough money to fill their piggy bank. And Narcena has proven she can throw punches like no one else. But Narcena, with her adventurous spirit, says no way she wants to keep going. So they continue. Later they arrive at the guild, where the receptionist, Angels, realizes that Lost took Narcena to the labyrinth instead of the prairie. Really, she says with a death glare. Lost, in defense mode, assures her that they only went to the upper floors, but for some strange reason there was an orc lurking. Narcena, with a gesture of a girl who didn't break anything, confirms the story. Angels calms down a bit since other reports also mention weird things in the labyrinth, but she only works there. She's not a detective or anything. They sell the magic stones, and the receptionist, with her eyes shining with greed, is more than happy to handle the paperwork. Narcena notices how happy she is, and Lost explains the more stones she sells, the more she fills her pockets. It almost seems like we're paying her to smile. Lost is surprised to see how much money they made, as half of what they have is 10 times more than he used to earn. However, right after that, you see him sunk in depression. Narcena, curious, asks him what's wrong, and Amherst drops the bomb in his old group. Lightning blades, they scammed him all the time. Narcena, angry like a wet cat, asks why the guild didn't do anything, and Lost tells her that intervening costs money. Then he offers that he could help her, but he declines, saying he has turned the page and has a new group. She accepts his decision, and when they leave the guild, a mysterious figure watches Lost from the shadows like a spy movie. Meanwhile, Angels is counting bills as if she's going to swim in them when Hansun, another guild employee, shows up and asks if she sent Lost to a new group. Me? If no one would accept him, even if I recommended him, she replies. Hansun mentions a weird girl who recruited him and then leaves, leaving Angels curious. We switch scenes, and the kids arrive at a bar where the waitress greets Lost, and upon seeing Narcena, becomes jealous. Gossip travels fast, says the waitress, as if she works for the local news. Lost, already resigned, asks her to reserve a room for them. The waitress's mother, who is much spicier, asks if they are going to share a room, and Narcena, tomato red, thinks that wouldn't be such a bad idea. But Lost, embarrassed, clarifies that he just wants separate rooms. Later, each in their own room, Narcena throws herself on the bed and remembers when Lost healed her. We discover that she is actually the same girl he saved years ago, and that since then she decided to become an adventurer to form a group with him. She has been training for all this time, but he has no idea as her appearance and hair have changed. No wonder he doesn't even recognize her. Still, Narcena feels happy to have found him. Although Lost is now much stronger, she is determined to protect him. Before falling asleep, she wonders why the people of the city consider him useless when he clearly has talent. In an epic flashback, Lost found himself on a mission with his old group of adventurers who seemed less like companions and more like his fiercest critics. You're just a lousy healer, Lost. You can barely cure a cold, they would say, as he tried to remember why he had joined these geniuses. To make matters worse, Siberia, the girl in the group, was poisoned by a hydra. Of course, Lost had warned them to bring antidotes, but his teammates, in their infinite wisdom and stinginess, thought spending money on potions was something only the weak did. The result, one hydra, one poisoned Siberia, and one Lost, wondering if all this was a nightmare. Meanwhile, Armia, the group's mage, turned out to be a dwarf with more fear than magic, and Margulis, the brave leader, opted for the classic every man for himself plan and fled. Armia, not wanting to fall behind in the cowardice competition, closely followed him, leaving Lost with the task of saving Siberia, while a giant hydra watched them like they were an appetizer. Time passed, and for some reason, Margulis still remained the leader and expelled Lost from the group. And Siberia, who didn't know the word gratitude, made it clear that it was all his fault we didn't defeat the Hydra because of you, Lost. He calmly reminded them that the reason they failed was that the rest of the team had shown up in about as good a shape as a sack of potatoes, but they, in their infinite capacity to blame others, intimidated Armia into pointing him out as the culprit of their failure. Because, of course, why admit mistakes when you can blame the healer? In the present, Lost wakes up from that dream, now almost a recurring nightmare, and comments while sipping a glass of water, "I even remember how stupid they were in my dreams." He bitterly laughs, recalling that 6 years ago they called him Lost the Useless, a title that sounded like a championship but was hardly encouraging. However, his dream of becoming a top-notch adventurer wasn't going to die that easily. Then a group arrived to offer him a job, and Lost, naive and desperate, accepted without hesitation. What he didn't know was that they didn't want a healer but a volunteer to be the monster's appetizer. Classic trick against the orphans of the labyrinth. But karma works fast. The adventurers who used him as bait were discovered by Ogress, who decided to turn them into today's lunch. Meanwhile, Lost was tired of being afraid, but he wasn't in a hurry to die. On one of those aimless wandering days, he stumbled upon a cart and a little blonde girl in distress. He decided to do the most heroic thing he had done in years and rescued her, fainting in the process. When he woke up, the girl was happy to see him well, and although he thought he hadn't helped much, she insisted that without his intervention, the knights wouldn't have arrived in time. Lost, who wasn't used to compliments, blushed more than a ripe tomato, and when he saw the girl was hurt, he did his part and healed her. That girl, who turned out to be the daughter of nobles, promised that she would become an adventurer and that they would form a group. Boss thought that was as likely as him learning to fly, but her words inspired him to move forward. Over time, he found someone to train him, and although he only knew basic healing, he began learning other adventurer skills. Eventually, he joined the Thunderblades, a name that sounded incredibly dangerous but made him feel like he was finally making progress. Ironically, in the present, Lost is in the same team as that girl, now a full-fledged adventurer. The next day, she invites him to breakfast, and after a good meal, they decide to venture into the labyrinth. On their way, they discover a teleportation circle, and Lost explains that not all labyrinths have one, and it would be great if they could use it to go to the city. Although, of course, that would also let the monsters and he jokes. Later, they encounter a specter, a lich, whom physical attacks don't affect. While Narcina wants to confront it with punches, Lost becomes bait again, as it seems that being the decoy is his destiny. In the end, they defeat the lich, although Lost ends up with burns on his arm. However, as always, he has a trick up his sleeve, a magical item that enhances his healing spells. Because if you're going to be a healer, you better be the best. After Lost finishes healing Narcina's wound, she, being a good financial strategist, asks the big question, "Hey, how much do you think we'll get paid for this shiny little thing?" In what seemed like an innocent exchange for dinner, they end up loaded with bills. Lost, who hadn't expected that magic stone to be so profitable, smiles as his stomach starts to roar like a beast from the labyrinth. Walking through the city, the group notices a commotion of people. "What are they fighting about now?" Narcina asks, looking at the chaos from afar. Lost, as if commenting on the weather, tells her, "Oh, don't worry, that always happens. All the troublesome adventurers from other cities gather here. It's like a prison, but without bars." Narcina remembers that Amherst warned her about this delightful collection of misfits. Yeah, they're real gems, she thinks as she watches one adventurer fight over a French fry. Lost, already hungry, decides there's no time for other people's drama, so he suggests to Narcina the best idea: forget that, let's celebrate and eat like kings. They reach the nearest tavern, and when they order food, the owner gives them the typical look of, "Can you pay for all this?" Lost, more confident than a dragon on its gold, replies with a smile, "Don't worry. Mom, tonight we are the rich ones." He then orders a beer, and Narcina, not wanting to be left behind, orders one too. But the owner's daughter, who is aware of the laws, intervenes. "We don't serve alcohol to minors." "Sorry." Narcina puffs up like a balloon about to burst. Lost, laughing, reminds her that she's still too young to be getting drunk, and although Narcina huffed in annoyance, she ultimately accepted her fate of drinking sparkling water. Later, while strolling through the city, Narcina's gaze fixates on a mysterious tower rising on the horizon. "Hey, Lost, what's that thing? It looks like a building but has no windows, no doors. It doesn't even have decorations. And why are there several throughout the city?" Lost had also felt the same curiosity in the past and tells her that when he asked, even those who built them didn't know what they were. It's like one of those chains of secret agents, he explains. An agent represented another agent who worked for another agent, and so on, like a bureaucratic onion. In the end, no one knows who commissioned those towers. This is worse than Diddy's contracts. Narcina, with her sharp intelligence, deduces that whoever built them doesn't want to reveal their identity. "Bravo," Sherlock Lost thinks with a smile. "But as long as they don't cause problems, all is well. Though, while we're at it, wouldn't it have been better to spend the money on walling off the city? Come on. It would be like any other isekai Lost ads," laughing. Narcina then realizes something important. Wait, what if the city gets invaded? Without walls, we're toast. But Lost reassures her, reminding her that the city is full of adventurers, monsters, bandits, whatever. Here, everyone would get a welcome beating in seconds. Upon arriving at the inn, Narcina, hesitating, asks Lost to wait a moment. But after thinking it over, she regrets it and simply wishes him good night. As she throws herself onto her bed, she sighs in frustration. "I wanted to sleep with him, but how do I say that without sounding weird?" She thinks, tossing in the sheets. Lost, for his part, feels lucky to have Narcina as a companion, though he still wonders if he will ever run into that little girl who inspired him to keep going. Meanwhile, he thanks Narcina for being the reason he remains an adventurer. The next day, the action takes another turn. Margulis introduces the girls in the group to the new healer of the Thunderblades, Lyra. The girls aren't exactly thrilled, as if they received news as exciting as cold soup. However, Margulis assures them that with Lyra, they will finally be able to defeat the Hydra. Everything is going smoothly. Or is it? Elsewhere, the plot takes a darker turn. Hansun, the typical dark and mysterious character, informs a hooded man that the sleeping princess is in the city, and to make matters worse, she's on the same team as Lost. The man is surprised to discover that Lost, the useless, is still alive. There's no time left. Deal with him. By any means necessary, he orders coldly. Don't miss what's coming next. Now we see the team of geniuses returning with the Hydra, and their leader is so happy because at least no more heads have grown back. The one they cut off is still missing. This genius turns to the girls and tells them that he and Lyra will go attack. Lyra, surprised, stops him and says that a healer shouldn't be in the front line. He, as if reciting the anthem of stupidity, responds that Lost always did it, even though he was an expert at running away. Lyra can't believe these fools sent a healer to the front lines. Siberius reminds her that it was actually he who cut the Hydra's head off. Lyra, speechless, wonders how a healer did that, but this genius tells her that if she can't go into battle, she should focus on healing and using antidotes because they plan to finish off the Hydra that same day. Meanwhile, the boys return to the guild with an impressive haul. Amherst notices that they have returned to the intermediate levels, so she warns Lost not to endanger Narcina. Lost responds that being only 2, they are quite cautious. Amherst tells him that's great, but they will always be limited like a pair of turtles in a race, so she recommends he look for more teammates. After all, they could use a warrior or a mage to face more dangerous monsters and in the process, earn more money. Lost nods, although he doesn't think they need it right now. Amherst mentions that at this rate they could rent a private house. Narcina is surprised, and Lost explains that groups with enough money can rent a place and stop living in an inn where the space is so limited that there's barely room for their backpacks. He also jokes that since they are a man and a woman, they could get affectionate and make their base something more special. Narcina blushes, and everyone falls silent, but Amherst laughs and says it might be better not to do that. Narcina wonders why they couldn't. Lost remembers that the Lightning Blades group had their own house, even though he lived in a closet, poor guy. Then, Amherst remembers that the best thing that could have happened to them was that he got expelled from the group. Everyone wonders why they can't finish off the Hydra. Lyra replies that it's because he keeps insisting on attacking head-on, even though he's not very strong. She needs to concentrate, so she focuses on healing Armia's wounds, while Sabrius tells another that Lost actually seems quite useful. He complains a lot, but does his part. The other idiot gets annoyed and wonders why he had to leave, although Sabrius reminds him that he was actually the one who kicked him out. The next day, Armia wakes up and sees Lyra sleeping next to her. Lyra asks if she's okay, and Armia replies that she feels much better. After that, Lyra begins to search for Sabrius and Margulis throughout the house without success. Meanwhile, Margulis tells Lost that he should be happy, because they now allow him to return to Lightning Blades. Everyone is surprised, as if a meteor had fallen, and Margulis tells him that he can return to his group. Amherst comments to Narcina that this is Margulis from Lightning Blades. Lost tells him he can't go back, and Margulis responds that if it's about money, it seems they miscalculated and were paying him less, but now they can recalculate. Narcina listens, very annoyed, and Margulis whispers to Lost that his new healer is a complete useless. Siberius blushes. But Lost says he is grateful. Suddenly, Narcina runs out to stop him, commenting that if they let their guard down for a moment, they'll go and harass him. She tells Margulis that Lost will never return to his group. Lost thanks Margulis for the invitation, but regrets that he now has a new companion and does not plan to go back to Lightning Blades. Margulis, surprised, asks if that girl is trying to take advantage of him, insinuating that she might know Lost is not a useless adventurer but quite useful. He asks Narcina if she isn't fooling him with the distribution of money and blames the guild for being involved. He tells Lost to open his eyes and stop being deceived. Lost, annoyed, grabs his arm and tells him he holds no grudge against them, but if he dares to do anything to Narcina, he will never donate to Lightning Blades. Margulis feels threatened. After this, the boys leave and Narcina sticks her tongue out at Margulis, who is left frustrated. He goes to Amherst to introduce him to someone new, someone strong who can keep up with him, because Lightning Blades is definitely going to defeat that Hydra. Just then, a warrior appears, and Margulis examines him from head to toe before drawing his sword to test his strength. Amherst tells him that fighting is prohibited in the guild, but Margulis ignores her and attacks. The warrior effortlessly sends his sword flying, leaving everyone speechless. Margulis, embarrassed, tells Amherst he'll take him. Saberia wonders if he's going to trust a man who hides his face. He responds that he only trusts his sword. Besides, they have no other alternatives. What would happen if rumors start spreading that they can't defeat the Hydra? If that happens, the reputation of Lightning Blades would be ruined. Margulis approaches the warrior and asks his name, to which he tries to respond but stops and only says he's called Shig. Sometime later, Narcina leaves her room and peeks down the hallway, seeing that Sheila is knocking on Lost's door. She wonders if that dwarf wants to get ahead of her. Then, Lost appears and asks Sheila what's going on. She tells him she has a visitor and asks Narcina if she wants to go, as it could involve her too. In a different scene, Lost meets with Lyra and Armia, where he first apologizes to him because he knows he's nobody to ask for what he's about to ask. He asks if he could help them defeat the Hydra since Margulis has become obsessed with it and plans to attack it again that day. Lyra mentions that she continues to refuse to buy antidotes and won't stop until someone ends up dead. Armia says it's already late, but now she understands how strong Lost is. If he hadn't cut off the Hydra's head, it would have killed them all. Lost tells her she can't be sure of that, but Lyra responds that she can't say that so simply because they are having a terrible time with a Hydra that has already lost 2 heads. Lost asks what they want to ask him. And Armia takes the opportunity to say that the Hydra hasn't healed completely yet. If he joins their group, they could defeat it without losing anyone. Lost asks if she wants him to return to Lightning Blades, to which Armia replies yes, a bit embarrassed. Lost feels uncomfortable and mentions that he assumed Margulis hadn't told her anything. Narcina asks Armia why she is so eager to help that group, or rather, to save Margulis since it seems they treat him very poorly. Armia responds that it's true that Margulis has problems. He's arrogant, reckless, cowardly, manipulative, rude, and vengeful. However, despite everything, they are companions. Narcina gets angry and asks what Lost is to her. Is she going to pretend she didn't know how they treated Margulis? Armia, scared, replies that she didn't agree with how they treated him but was afraid of being kicked out if she said anything. She laments her inexperience since she had never been with other groups and didn't know if Margulis was right or wrong. Now, she understands that Margulis is wrong and is a bad adventurer in person, but she can't turn her back on a companion. Sure, but she turned her back on Lost. Lyra comments that she wanted to apologize a long time ago because when she was healing her, she could only agonize over asking Lost for forgiveness. She understands how she can feel, but she asks if she could accept her apology. Lost gets up, extends his hand, and asks her to stop crying. He tells her he already told Margulis he holds no grudge against them, so that's enough. Armia is happy and takes his hand, thanking him for forgiving her. But Lost responds that he has no intention of returning to Lightning Blades. The owner of the restaurant interrupts them, serving a good plate and commenting that the little girl looks pale. She hopes she eats well because no one leaves her restaurant with that face. Armia feels embarrassed, but the elderly woman tells her to eat as much as she wants. Meanwhile, Narcina asks Lyra if she could convince Armia to leave Lightning Blades. Lyra replies that if she could do that, she wouldn't be there. Lyra tells Lost that Armia is very kind, and he remembers that Margulis had said the new healer was a useless. He asks if she is Lyra, the healer, and comments that, although he doesn't like getting involved where he's not called, he might have problems in that group. Lyra asks him if he implies that she should leave the group and abandon her. Lost understands, and seeing Armia, stays thoughtful. In a later scene, Lyra arrives at the guild and is surprised to see Shig, but Margulis tells her that he doesn't go by that name. Then he runs out excitedly to prepare to go fight the Hydra. When they are alone, Lyra asks him what the hell he is doing there. He feigns ignorance and responds that he doesn't know who he is. Lyra, on the edge of despair, tells him that it's obvious it's him and asks if he took another horrible job. Shig only ignores her and turns away. Lyra is surprised to see that he is carrying Ronaldo's sword and asks if he stole it. He responds that he inherited it from his mentor, delaying his true identity. He then tries to straighten up, but it's too late. Finally, with no other choice, he tells her he owes her one. Lyra leaves blushing, and in a final scene, we see the boys leaving the city, with Lost looking towards the Hydra and Lightning Blades heading towards it. A while later, our heroes find themselves facing some ogres. Narcina, with almost terrifying efficiency, defeats them without breaking a sweat. Lost, impressed, congratulates her on the incredible job, though he suggests it's time to rest. Narcina, wanting to prove she's fine, insists she can keep going, but just at that moment, her stomach growls like a lion. Lost laughs, and she, blushing, yells at him not to tease her. Lost suggests having lunch, even if it's a little early, and she, face as red as a tomato, accepts. Later, they set up a picnic, and Lost is stunned by the sheer amount of food. Narcina explains that Mari from the inn gave them all the food Armia had left, so basically they hit the jackpot. While eating, Lost tells Narcina about the Hydra, the monster they'll soon face. It's powerful, venomous, and has scales so tough they repel both physical and magical attacks. Narcina is surprised and asks if Armia and the team will survive. Lost reassures her, although Hydras are rare and dangerous, there's a lot of knowledge on how to beat them. However, they'll need a special antidote for the venom. But Margulis's group didn't buy one, preferring to rely on Lyra's antidote spell. Narcina is concerned, but Lost assures her that the Lightning Blades team didn't earn their name for nothing. After lunch, they continue. Narcina, feeling a bit bored, remarks that they're always exploring the same labyrinth. Lost asks if she wants to go somewhere else, and she suggests the wetlands. Lost looks at her as if she just suggested a trip to the moon. Meanwhile, the Lightning Blades group is fighting the Hydra. Shig and Margulis manage to wound it, but just when Shig could deal the finishing blow, he stops. Margulis, irritated, asks why he hesitated, and Shig replies that Margulis probably wants the glory of being Margulis, the Hydra Slayer. Margulis, blushing, lunges, only to end up face-planting into the ground. Lyra, watching, wonders why he always rushes in without thinking. The battle rages on, and while the Hydra is growing weaker thanks to Shig's attacks, it still puts up a fight. Margulis lands another blow, and the team begins to believe they might actually win, but then the Hydra hurls a massive rock that nearly crushes Armia, sending her into a panic. To everyone's shock, the Hydra seems to absorb Armia's fear, using it to power itself up. Shig observes this with curiosity, and suddenly the Hydra starts devouring the surrounding mana. Margulis, confused, asks what's happening, and Lyra explains that some monsters absorb large amounts of magic to evolve and enhance their abilities. Right then, the Hydra regrows its heads like some kind of regenerating plant. Shig suggests retreating, but Margulis, dead set on being the Hydra Slayer, charges in with his sword, which shatters on impact. The Hydra prepares to send him to the afterlife, but just then, Lost and Narcina arrive. Shig asks Lost to heal Armia while he and Narcina distract the monster. Lost begins casting a basic healing spell repeatedly, and Lyra, curious, asks what on earth he's doing. Siberia, a veteran of Lost's methods, explains that he's stacking the spells. Lyra, astonished, wonders who Lost really is. Armia wakes up briefly, overjoyed to see Lost, but quickly falls back into exhaustion. Meanwhile, the Hydra, annoyed by the arrival of new opponents, demands a one-on-one with Lost. Lyra explains that the Hydra has evolved to the point of developing some intelligence and now wants a fair fight. Lost agrees, asking everyone not to interfere, but elsewhere in the world, a mysterious old man closes his eyes as if sensing that something is about to happen. Lost, desperate, tries to reach Narsena as the monster holds her back. Just as Shig prepares to step in, Lost releases a strange aura that impresses everyone. The old man, in his mysterious hideaway, murmurs that something meant to lie dormant has awakened. Lost, in mere seconds, pulverizes the Hydra, then collapses, unconscious. Later, Narsena wakes Lost, worried, and tells him that she managed to revive him thanks to Lyra, who had bought the antidote just in time, though of course it wasn't free. The blonde quickly adds, "You owe me big for that one loss," somewhat dazed, asks about Armia's condition, and Shig replies that while she's still asleep, her life is no longer in danger. Intrigued, Lyra asks what on earth Lost did to defeat the Hydra, but he can't remember a thing. At that moment, Margulis, ever the flatterer, comments that he knew Lost was someone impressive and that with him on the team, they could defeat any monster, even the Mardat Labyrinth boss. Lost cuts him off, reminding him he has no intention of joining his team. But Margulis continues, offering to split the profits from the magic crystals 3 ways. Lost, confused, asks 3 ways. Margulis explains that only he, Siberia, and Lost will share the reward because in his opinion, Lyra and Shig barely helped. And as for Narsena, he assumes she doesn't need the pay, viewing her merely as an escort. Lost can't help but worry about Armia, but Siberia coldly replies that that poor girl is beyond saving, even suggesting they sell her into slavery because some man might pay well for her. Enraged, Lost is about to act, but Narsena punches Margulis instead. Margulis protests, reminding them that guild rules prohibit fighting between adventurers, but Shig and Lyra, unbothered, claim we didn't see anything. Siberia, furious, threatens to report them all as accomplices, but Shig calmly responds that he did see something. An idiot suggesting human trafficking, and as a guild representative, he can't ignore that. He then asks Margulis to come with him, and Margulis, fearful, asks who Shig really is. Back in the city, Shig reveals that he's an adventurer authorized by the capital. Amherst, the guild clerk, asks what he's doing there, and Shig replies that as a guild representative, he has authority over other adventurers. Additionally, he's been investigating because the city's security has recently been compromised. Lyra asks what will happen to Margulis and Siberia, and Amherst responds that they'll be expelled from the guild and sentenced to lifetime forced labor. Lost, always one for second chances, requests a private word with Shig and begs him to spare the 2. He explains that some people live only to be adventurers, and while they may now seek fame and fortune, perhaps at one point they had nobler intentions. Shig listens and finally agrees, but warns Margulis and Siberia that they must leave for the farthest city possible. They, terrified, flee without looking back. Amherst, surprised, asks Shig if he really believes a second chance will change them. Shig explains that in a large city like the capital, it'll be easier to keep an eye on adventurers like them. That night, Shig tells Lyra that the capital suspects the issues in Mardate may be linked to the guild itself or even the guildmaster. That's why he decided to stay, and he asks Lyra to form a team to investigate. Lyra agrees, but with one condition: to recruit Armia as well, because she has no intention of abandoning her. Shig, happy to add allies, agrees, making it clear that now he has more people to keep an eye on. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss the upcoming adventures.